In the golden age of the New Kingdom, around 1250 BCE, the city of Thebes stood as the beating heart of ancient Egypt, its temples and palaces gleaming under the watchful eye of the sun, god Ra. Pharaoh Ramesses II, known as Ramesses the Great, ruled with a firm hand, his reign marked by monumental constructions and military campaigns. Yet, beneath the grandeur of his court, a shadowy world thrived, a world of sorcerers and priests who wielded the magic of the gods. These sorcerers, known as the Keepers of the Crimson Flame, were feared and revered, their powers drawn from ancient rituals that bridged the mortal realm and the divine. Among the common folk of Thebes lived Khepri, a 22-year-old laborer who toiled under the scorching sun to build the pharaoh's grand monuments. Khepri's life was one of hardship, his hands calloused, his dreams limited to surviving each day. But everything changed when he stumbled upon a forbidden ritual in the desert, a ritual performed by the Keepers of the Crimson Flame. Drawn into their world of magic and mystery, Khepri's fate was forever altered. The sorcerers, seeing potential in him, bestowed upon him a gift and a curse that would transform his life, pulling him into a web of power, betrayal, and divine retribution. This is the story of Khepri's journey, a tale of how the magic of ancient Egypt's sorcerers reshaped a humble man's destiny, forever entwining his life with the will of the gods. Khepri's days began before dawn, as he joined hundreds of laborers hauling limestone blocks for the expansion of the Ramesseum, Ramesses II's mortuary temple. Born to a family of farmers, Khepri had been conscripted into the pharaoh's workforce after a poor harvest left his village unable to pay tribute. At 22, he was strong but weary, his back scarred from the overseer's whip, his dreams buried beneath the weight of survival. His only solace was the Nile, where he would sit at dusk, watching the river's gentle flow and whispering prayers to Hapi, the god of the flood, for a better life. One evening, after a grueling day, Khepri wandered farther into the desert than usual, seeking a moment of solitude. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the dunes, when he heard a low chant carried by the wind. Curiosity overcoming his exhaustion, he followed the sound, his sandals sinking into the sand with each step. As he crested a dune, he saw a circle of cloaked figures gathered around a fire that burned an unnatural crimson. Their chants grew louder, invoking names Khepri had only heard in whispers: Set, the god of chaos, and Sekhmet, the lioness of war. These were the Keepers of the Crimson Flame, sorcerers who served the pharaoh but operated in secrecy, their rituals forbidden to outsiders. Khepri crouched behind a boulder, his heart pounding, as the leader of the group, a tall figure with a shaved head and kohl-rimmed eyes, raised a staff topped with a ruby that glowed like fire. The sorcerer, whose name Khepri would later learn was Nebthet, called upon the gods to grant them power over life and death. Suddenly, the fire flared, and a gust of wind knocked Khepri from his hiding spot. The sorcerers turned, their eyes narrowing as they spotted the intruder. Before Khepri could flee, Nebthet pointed his staff, and an invisible force pinned Khepri to the ground. "You dare witness the sacred rites?" Nebthet's voice was cold, his gaze piercing. Khepri stammered an apology, pleading for mercy, but the sorcerers exchanged glances. "The gods have brought him here for a reason," said a younger sorceress named Meret, her voice softer but equally commanding. After a tense deliberation, Nebthet decided Khepri's fate. He would be bound to their order, a servant to their will, or face death for his trespass. Desperate to live, Khepri agreed, unaware of the true cost of his decision. The Keepers of the Crimson Flame performed a ritual to bind Khepri to their service, a ceremony that would change his life irrevocably. They placed a crimson amulet around his neck, its surface etched with hieroglyphs that glowed faintly. Nebthet explained that the amulet granted Khepri the ability to see and manipulate the Ka, the spiritual essence of living beings, a power reserved for the gods and their chosen. With this gift, Khepri could heal wounds, influence emotions, or even glimpse fragments of the future. But the amulet came with a curse. Every use of its power would drain his own life force, aging him prematurely and tethering his soul to the will of the sorcerers. At first, Khepri was in awe of his new ability. Returning to Thebes, he tested the amulet's power on a fellow laborer, Amun, who had been injured by a falling stone. Khepri placed his hands over Amun's crushed arm, focusing on the faint glow of Amun's Ka. The amulet warmed against his chest, and a golden light flowed from Khepri's hands, mending Amun's arm in moments. The laborers around him gasped, some calling it a miracle, others whispering of dark magic. But Khepri felt a sharp pain in his chest, and when he looked at his reflection in the Nile, he saw strands of gray in his hair, his first sign of the curse's toll. Word of Khepri's healing spread, and soon he was summoned to the palace of Ramesses II. The pharaoh's youngest son, Prince Meremptah, had fallen ill with a fever that defied the court physicians. Nebthet, who served as an advisor to the pharaoh, recommended Khepri, hoping to use his new servant to gain favor. Khepri was brought before Ramesses, whose presence was as commanding as the statues that bore his likeness. The pharaoh's eyes, sharp and unyielding, studied Khepri as Nebthet explained the laborer's newfound gift. "Heal my son, and you will be rewarded," Ramesses declared. "Fail, and you will join the Duat sooner than you wish." Khepri knelt beside the prince's bed, his hands trembling as he summoned the amulet's power. Meremptah's Ka was faint, flickering like a dying flame, but Khepri poured his energy into it, willing the boy to live. The golden light enveloped the prince, and slowly his fever broke, his breathing steadying. The court erupted in murmurs of awe, and Ramesses, though not one for sentiment, nodded in approval. Khepri was granted a small house near the palace and a position as a healer, a far cry from his life as a laborer. Yet, as he left the palace, he felt the curse's weight. His hands shook, and his vision blurred, signs that his life force was dwindling. Khepri's new life brought him comfort, but also servitude. The keepers of the Crimson Flame used him as a tool, sending him to heal nobles and soldiers to curry favor with the pharaoh while they pursued a darker agenda. Nebthet revealed their true goal, to summon Sekhmet herself, the goddess of war and destruction, to grant Ramesses II eternal victory over his enemies. The ritual required a sacrifice, a life whose Ka was pure and strong. Nebthet believed Khepri, whose spirit had been touched by the gods, was the perfect candidate. Khepri, however, had begun to question the sorcerer's intentions. His interactions with the common people of Thebes, whom he healed in secret, opened his eyes to the suffering caused by the pharaoh's endless wars. Among those he helped was a young woman named Anuket, a weaver whose family had been displaced by Ramesses's campaigns in Nubia. Anuket's gratitude and stories of her village's destruction stirred something in Khepri. He realized that the sorcerer's ambition would only bring more suffering, and he could not allow himself to be the catalyst for such devastation. One night, Khepri slipped away from the palace and sought out Meret, the sorceress who had shown him kindness. He pleaded with her to help him break the curse and stop Nebthet's plan. Meret, torn between loyalty to her order and her growing doubts, revealed that the amulet could only be destroyed by returning it to the desert where it was forged during a rare alignment of the stars that would occur in 3 days. But doing so would unleash the amulet's stored energy, potentially killing Khepri in the process. Faced with the choice between his life and the lives of countless others, Khepri chose to act. With Anuket's help, Khepri gathered supplies and fled Thebes under the cover of darkness. The sorcerers, sensing his betrayal, sent their agents after him, shadowy figures who wielded dark magic to track him. Khepri and Anuket faced numerous dangers on their journey: sandstorms, bandits, and the sorcerer's minions. But Khepri's ability to see Ka allowed him to sense threats before they struck. Along the way, he used the amulet sparingly, healing Anuket when she fell ill from exhaustion, each use further aging him. By the time they reached the desert site, Khepri's hair was fully gray, and his body felt as frail as an old man's. On the night of the celestial alignment, the stars formed a blazing constellation above the desert. Khepri and Anuket arrived at the ritual site, the same place where Khepri had first encountered the sorcerers. Nebthet and the keepers of the Crimson Flame were already there, preparing to summon Sekhmet. The crimson fire roared, and the air crackled with divine energy as Nebthet chanted, his staff glowing brighter with each word. Khepri, clutching the amulet, stepped forward, interrupting the ritual. "This ends now," he declared, his voice steady despite his weakened state. Nebthet sneered, ordering his minions to seize Khepri, but Anuket fought back, using a dagger to fend them off. In the chaos, Khepri approached the fire and raised the amulet, calling upon the gods to witness his act. "Ra, Hapi, Sekhmet, I return what was taken. Let this power be undone," he shouted. The amulet shattered in his hands, releasing a wave of crimson energy that consumed the fire and knocked everyone to the ground. The sorcerers screamed as their own magic turned against them, their bodies disintegrating into ash. Khepri felt the energy surge through him, burning away the last of his life force. As he collapsed, he saw a vision of Sekhmet, her lioness form towering over him. "You have chosen wisely, mortal," she roared, her voice echoing like thunder. "Your sacrifice has restored balance." Khepri's vision faded, but he felt a warmth envelop him, as if the gods themselves were cradling his soul. Anuket, unharmed by the energy wave, knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face as she held his hand. "You saved us," she whispered. Khepri smiled weakly, his final breath escaping as he whispered, "For you. For all of Egypt." Anuket returned to Thebes, carrying the story of Khepri's sacrifice. The news reached the palace, and though Ramesses II initially sought to punish those involved, he was moved by Anuket's account and the loss of his sorcerers. The pharaoh declared Khepri a hero of the people, ordering a small shrine to be built in his honor near the Nile, where laborers and common folk could pray for his soul. Anuket dedicated her life to preserving Khepri's memory, becoming a storyteller who shared his tale with future generations. The keepers of the Crimson Flame were no more, their dark ambitions thwarted by a humble laborer's courage. Khepri's sacrifice not only saved Egypt from Sekhmet's wrath, but also inspired a shift in the pharaoh's policies. Ramesses II, reflecting on the unrest caused by his wars, eased conscription and redirected resources to support the poor, a change that brought a brief period of peace to the land. Khepri's life, once defined by hardship, became a legend that echoed through the ages. The sorcerers of ancient Egypt, with their forbidden magic, had sought to bend the will of the gods, but Khepri's selfless act proved that even the humblest soul could alter the course of history. His encounter with the keepers of the Crimson Flame transformed him from a laborer into a savior, a man who bore the weight of a divine curse to protect his people. The shrine by the Nile became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking hope, its walls inscribed with Khepri's story. Anuket, now an elder, would sit by the shrine in her later years, telling children of the man who defied the sorcerers and the gods to save Egypt. "Khepri taught us that true power lies in sacrifice," she would say, her voice carrying the weight of memory. In the annals of Egypt, where pharaohs and gods dominated the tales, Khepri's name lived on as a symbol of courage and humanity. The magic of the Crimson Flame, once a force of destruction, was extinguished, but its legacy endured in the lessons it left behind. Khepri's life, forever changed by the sorcerers, reminded the people of Thebes and the world beyond that even in the shadow of greatness, a single act of bravery could outshine the might of kings and gods.